time is now 6:31, June 24th. I call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Commissioners, I will now make a motion to approve the meeting agenda for this evening. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, got a second. So I'll call for a vote. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor of approving the meeting agenda, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved 5-0. You got everybody here today. Commissioners, I will now entertain a motion to approve I will now make a motion to approve the minutes for the May 29th meeting of the Planning Commission. I have a motion from the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Kristen. Any discussion on the minutes from last meeting? Everybody's had a chance to look over? Hearing no discussion, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the May 29th meeting, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Measure passes 5-0. Planning Commissioners, this is our third meeting together, so I'd like to go down the line. Does any of our planning commissioners have any comments that they would like to make?
I have some.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to congratulate Chris Atkins on his nomination to the Leadership Gwinnett class.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? All right. At this point, I will now open the period for public comments. Please reserve your comments related to a specific agenda item when I call for those comments on that item. Comments to the Planning Commission should be limited to no more than 3 minutes per speaker. Groups wishing to address the issue should select 1 or 2 spokespersons. The time allowed for the issue shall not exceed a total of 15 minutes. Issues raised at this time are generally referred to the Secretary for review, and responses will be provided at a later date. Okay, I now make a motion to open the time period for public comment. Do I have a second?
Second.
Now, there's a second. All those in favor of opening the public comment section, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. We're now open to the public comment section of the meeting. Do we have anybody who'd like to make a public comment? All right, hearing none, I will now make a motion to close the public comment section of the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor of closing the public comment section, please raise your hand and say wise. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. We have closed the comment section, the public comment section for the meeting. All right. Old business. There is no old business for this meeting, so we will be moving directly to the new business. We'll now move into the new business section of the agenda. Our first item of new business is as follows. We will have a review of the comprehensive plan updates. Staff, I will now ask you to present the staff analysis and recommendations.
Thank you. Good evening. This marks an important step in kind of the evolution of Mulberry as a city, adopting a revised version of the comprehensive plan. So just to start, I think probably a couple of meetings ago, we talked about kind of what is a comprehensive plan, what does it do for a community, but I'll kind of outline that for you first. A comp plan is a policy guiding document, and so it is visionary in nature, kind of should reflect the vision for growth for a community. It kind of in structure provides a vision, a set of character areas that the city designated into different areas, and those character areas defined by architectural style, kind of land use character, various tenets of kind of growth and development. A comp plan is a roadmap. It's not regulatory in nature, and so just by way of example, if we identify something in the comprehensive plan as desired equestrian estate lots, and by zoning, the zoning doesn't necessarily reflect that, because zoning is the regulatory tool. If there's something that's allowed by right in that zoning district, then there's not anything really the comp plan can do to stop that. The best kind of way to move forward with that is once we develop a comp plan that is consistent with the city's vision, then the zoning ordinance and all of the zoning in the map reflects that comprehensive plan. That's kind of the most congruent way to kind of see your comprehensive plan out. But if there are things that are currently zoned that are inconsistent with it, then there are rights that those property owners have under that current zoning. So that's why we say it's policy guiding, and it comes into play when we are reviewing text amendments, map amendments, or rezoning, special land use permits. That when they're those legislative decisions, that's when the comp plan really comes into play in those scenarios, as we are able to reference and make recommendations and ultimately mayor and city council decisions based on that policy document. So earlier this year, we adopted by reference the Gwinnett 2045 comprehensive plan as our policy guiding document, and now that we are on the cusp of accepting those applicant-initiated rezonings and special land use permits and any other legislative decisions July 1st. Now that we've kind of gotten an understanding for what the vision for city council and city representatives as representatives of the greater population desires for the community, then we have some kind of interim adjustments that we want to make to that, to be ready, to be prepared for this document to be the document that we reference when we're considering those map amendments and those special use permits. So from an iterative standpoint, we are proposing to make this update just to be initially prepared for that process. Then later this year, do a little bit more in-depth update. Probably the map that you've got now was just kind of a quick and dirty get the general geography of these different character areas in there. We are working with IT to put together an actual parcel-based map, so that ultimately what city council adopts will be parcel-based and not kind of those blobs right now. But there will still be probably some further refining of those boundaries that we want to do, maybe some mapping exercises of, should this district cover this parcel or the one north of it. So there'll probably be some language that we include in there to more so allow that to be a little bit more fluid until we get more definitive boundaries through a follow-up process. But why it's important now is because of this July 1st deadline to really get something in place that we have that more closely reflects the city kind of ideals and vision. So in addition to the map, the draft that you have before you is a refined set of character areas that reflects kind of priority in preserving the rural character, really defining an equestrian kind of land use type, amenity type that we're looking for in a lot of the residential development. That kind of starts to build on the equestrian identity that already exists. So from a process standpoint, you will review this today, and then it'll go through to be reviewed by city council and ultimately adopted by resolution. And then we've got those subsequent processes. Again, the second iterative version, and then the full-scale rewrite through Department of Community Affairs. There's the Georgia Planning Act requires for us to be a qualified local government, that by December 2026 that we go through a full-fledged adoption, and there's a whole sending it to DCA for comment process, public hearing process that we will go through to kind of meet the Georgia Planning Act. This right now is a process just to kind of set our growth policy in place for all of these applications.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
And then now make a motion to open the public comment section. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of opening the public comment period, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. We now would like to open it up to the public comment section. Do we have anyone here that would like to speak to the comp plan? For or against? Anyone? Bueller? All right. Easy. Well, I now want to go ahead and make a motion to close the public comment section on the new business. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor of closing the public comment section, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. I would now like to make a motion to open up the period for discussion amongst the commission. I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of opening up discussion for the commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We now have a discussion period for the commission. Does anybody have anything that they'd like, any questions for staff?
I've got, yeah, I have some questions.
Okay.
Rebecca. These. I mean, first of all, like, as far as the wording and the different categories, I think it looks good. I like all the categories and stuff. I think that was, you know, as we're refining this, I think you hit on it before, just sort of with the map, and that was probably my biggest concern, is just saying, you know, how does these areas define? What's in the middle between, because we've got some colored circles on here, but there's really nothing that defines those middle grounds, and I know that that's something that's gonna be worked on. A couple of questions that I sort of have with that is, you mentioned refining that process. How is that process gonna be to refine it? Because that, I think, is important, because you're gonna have a lot of areas within the city that it may make a difference, just one lot. And so how is that process coming about?
Yeah. So for this adoption that is scheduled for before July 1st, we will, for the council meeting, have that refined map with proposed boundaries. Within that map, we will define kind of that gray area boundary of like the context needs to be part of the consideration about whether or not it's this color or this color effectively. Beyond that, so that's kind of for right now and kind of how we would utilize that from a policy language standpoint. Beyond that, to further refine the hardness of that boundary, where it's a little less fluid as we look at individual cases, we're looking at it as mapping exercise of sorts as we open it back up for further refinement and consideration, to really understand, you know, kind of what's there now, what do we envision to be there longer term. So that's kind of a, you know, July 1 to December 31, you know, somewhere within that time frame that will happen. Whereas this is a little bit more, the kind of more gray line is in the next week.
And one of the things I noticed on here is under each one, you've got, you know, there's zoning classes listed with each one of those. Is that a restriction in there, or is this more just in general? And then, you know, to add to that also, like on some of these, it talks about like larger setback lots. Is that been defined? Is that defined in the zoning classification, or is that going to be defined within that use class?
Good question. So as far as the zoning, kind of the recommended zoning categories, because it is all guiding, and these are discretionary decisions on the part of city council, there is nothing that is set in stone. This is, as we make our recommendation, as you make your recommendation, this is good,
Mhm.
kind of boundaries for us to be able to recommend yay or nay for different things. But it still leaves room if there's something that makes sense to be outside of the boundaries, that there still is that flexibility. Now, I will say, a necessary component of kind of updating a comp plan is then going through and updating ordinances. So if there are inconsistencies, we will kind of in that same time period wanna go through the ordinance and update inconsistencies. Now, that doesn't change map inconsistencies, that could still be the case, you know,
Right.
differing from the future land use map. But certainly the regulation, it's a good next step from an implementation standpoint.
And this one doesn't totally relate to this, but just curiosity wise, when we're talking about zoning classifications, have we adapted all the zoning classifications from Gwinnett County? Are we taking some of those out based on what the wants of the city are?
Yeah, so one thing that, we did do as a function of this, let's see, in the first district where, we start and talk about compatible zoning districts.
Right.
Ag right now is actually, a repealed district in the UDO because it was repealed under Gwinnett. And so we've got labeled there to be enabled as a district. So we need to go in and change the text to allow that to be something
Gotcha.
that it can be zoned into. We've also talked about other either overlays or, brand new districts, so it would be like equestrian districts. So those would have to be added in policy language and ordinance, so a little bit of both.
And will setbacks be looked at that same time with each one of those?
It could, yeah, I mean, right now, this is, again, just kind of guiding.
Sure, yeah.
But certainly, because we're talking about, you know, larger lot setbacks and things, we can say, is what we're saying are the compatible districts, is that what we would say would
Okay.
be larger lot? It's where the rubber meets the road, really.
That's all I have.
Any other questions? Commissioners?
Yeah, so we can, I have just maybe a comment question, just for curious. So all the compatible zoning districts that are labeled for each one of the areas, you know, like, those fit the restraints of like, you know, how many units per acre, lot size, things of that nature. But these were just adopted from Gwinnett County, correct?
Yeah, and I will say, in addition to, because most of the projects that are going to, need to comply with this.
Yeah.
Even at, like, so RA 200, I think it's what, 2 acre lots?
Just under an acre.
Just under an acre, that's what it is. Yeah, it's 40,000 square feet. So the lot size that we have for this, the equestrian rural estates character area identifies a lot size of minimum 2 acres. So if there's a development that comes before you that says, I want to rezone a property to RA 200 in the equestrian rural estates, because we've got that policy that says minimum 2 acres and they're here for a discretionary request, even though that zoning district right now has approximately an acre minimum, you've got policy guidance that says that we can restrict that further than even the zoning ordinance. It'd have to be within the zoning conditions, stated within those that were adopted with the rezoning. But because you've got that policy guidance, that's kind of our further protection until the zoning ordinance is updated.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only one I see is the one for suburban transition, which, you know, has a lot size of 1/4 acre to 1/2 acre. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of 1/4 acre lots and, you know, higher density, so, you know, but I'm sure that that's, those compatible zoning areas, that's what fits into there, so.
And then you can see, if you reference the map, suburban transition. The orange on the map is
Yeah.
where those are identified on the map, kind of in the more intensive areas.
I think most of those are work developed, with the exception of the one
Mm-hmm.
on the north side of 85.
Up here. Yeah, that was just my only concern, again, meeting what the wants of the city and people who, support it.
Okay, any other questions? Commission has?
So, I know you mentioned that part of the effort that's still underway is to get this map a little bit more accurate. The one that we're looking at, did it include the properties that were annexed in?
This one does not, no, we are meeting, with Internet to kind of include that in even the city boundaries. I think that was today, Tuesday, meeting with them on Thursday, so that should incorporate those as well.
Okay, do we anticipate any significant changes as those get incorporated, or? With just these
Not
maps?
likely, no.
Anything else?
No, I mean, I think my big thing is just, I agree, the circles are kind of hard to see where the boundary lines are, so I think cleaning that up, but I get the general idea.
The only last comment I would have real quick, sorry, bouncing back. But it does bring up a good point when you talk about these transition areas, to me, these transition areas a lot of these are in already developed communities. What I would hope to not see is that when you're talking, say this south side down here, it's definitely the more rural area of it, and we've got a transition area in there, I would hope that that would be within, say, that community that's already developed, instead of saying, hey, we're out in the country here and all of a sudden we've got,
Yeah.
we've allotted a little bit of space over here for some smaller lots.
Right, I mean, the kind of parcel level, look at where those lines, those boundaries should be drawn. We're looking at current zoning as well as kind of current land use.
Yeah.
There's just the next iteration of like looking more deeply at that is, there are property owners, there are people who know these properties, very well and might think shifting a parcel over, might be more appropriate. There's just additional
Sure, there's
information
some-
that you all have, yeah.
Any other questions?
No, I think we asked a lot of good ones, actually.
All right, hearing none, I will make a motion to close the discussion portion of our meeting. Do I get a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of closing the discussion of our meeting, please raise your hand and say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes to close the discussion section 5-0. I will make a motion to recommend to city council let's see. Comprehensive plan amendment update to the city council as it stands. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. I have a
Can-
motion.
Can we add on to there, I'd like to see us add on there that they make sure that, I know she said she's already had that, but I'd still like to just make sure that we've got in there that there would be an update of the map to go to city council.
Okay, do I need to back out my?
Sorry.
No, that's okay. This is a great exercise. So now that there's a first and a second, the motion belongs to the commission. So if you'll make a motion to amend the motion to add that,
Okay,
get a second, vote on that, and then vote on the hearing.
okay. So I would like to make a motion to amend the motion.
State how you're amending it.
Okay. So I would amend that we pass the comprehensive plan to go to city council with the amendment that the map be further defined to show all regions clearly,
Parcel based.
parcel based.
process.
Got a second? All right. All right, there's a motion on the floor. What he said. All those in favor of the motion, please, raise your hand. And say, saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
And so that was, you were voting on the amendment to the motion, so now you'll vote on the full amended motion.
Okay, so again.
So now, so you voted to include the amendment in the original motion, so now vote on the
Entire
amendment.
motion, okay. All right. Well, now we'll take a vote, by raising your hand on the entire motion, to recommend as it stands with the amendment, with the parcel-based recommendation. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0. Commissioners, this concludes our business for this meeting. I will now make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I now have a motion and a second. I will call it to a vote. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? All right, hearing none, that motion carries 5-0. Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned at 6:58. I knew it was precise.